told you that despite thousands of sanctions, global pressure, and economic warfare, Russia is still making billions from oil every single day, and not just surviving, but adapting, evolving, and outmaneuvering the system designed to stop it? This isn't happening in plain sight. It's happening in the shadows, across oceans, through hidden networks, and inside a fleet that technically shouldn't even exist. They call it Russia's shadow fleet. And right now, it's quietly reshaping the global economy. After the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, the United States, along with the G7 and European allies, launched one of the most aggressive sanction regimes in modern history. The goal was simple: cut off Russia's oil revenue, and you weaken its ability to fund war. Oil is the backbone of Russia's economy. No oil money means no sustained military power. But here's where things didn't go according to plan. Instead of collapsing under pressure, Russia adapted, and it adapted fast. Rather than relying on traditional Western controlled shipping, insurance, and financial systems, Russia began building something entirely new: a parallel system, a workaround, a shadow network of oil transportation that operates outside the rules. This is what we now call the Shadow Fleet, a massive, decentralized group of oil tankers designed specifically to bypass sanctions and keep Russian oil flowing. These aren't your typical commercial vessels. Many of these ships are old, sometimes decades old, bought in bulk from secondary markets. Their ownership is often hidden behind layers of shell companies registered in offshore jurisdictions and constantly shifting on paper. One day, a ship belongs to a company in the UAE. The next week, it's owned by a different entity in another country. It's a game of constant identity change, making it extremely difficult for regulators to track who's actually behind these operations. And then comes one of the most critical tactics: going dark. Every major ship in the world is supposed to have something called an AIS, or Automatic Identification System. It broadcasts the ship's location, route, and identity in real time. But Shadow Fleet vessels often switch this system off completely. They disappear from tracking maps. No signal, no location, nothing. In some cases, they even spoof their GPS signals, sending fake coordinates to make it look like they're somewhere they're not. Imagine a 300-meter oil tanker just vanishing from the digital world. That's not a glitch, that's strategy. But it gets even more complex. Instead of delivering oil directly from Russia to a buyer, these ships often meet in the middle of the ocean for what's known as ship-to-ship transfers. Two tankers pull up side by side in international waters, and oil is transferred between them. No port, no official record, no clear origin. By the time that oil reaches its final destination, it's almost impossible to trace where it originally came from. This breaks the entire chain of accountability. And then there's oil blending. Russian crude doesn't always stay Russian. It gets mixed with oil from other countries, refined in third-party nations, and then re-exported as a completely different product. For example, crude oil from Russia might be shipped to India, refined into diesel, and then sold to Europe. Legally, it's no longer considered Russian oil. But economically, the money still flows back to Russia. This is one of the biggest loopholes in the global sanction system, and it's being used at scale. Behind all of this is a massive financial web. Dozens, sometimes hundreds of small trading companies, many of them newly created, operate in coordination. These companies buy oil, sell it quickly, and then disappear. They're often registered in offshore financial hubs where transparency is limited. A single shipment might pass through 5 different companies before reaching its final buyer. On paper, everything looks fragmented. In reality, it's all part of a coordinated system designed to hide the bigger picture. So who's actually buying this oil? The answer is simple: countries that either didn't fully adopt Western sanctions or are willing to take advantage of discounted prices. Nations like India and China have significantly increased their imports of Russian oil since 2022. For them, it's an economic opportunity: cheaper energy, stable supply, and strategic advantage. And for Russia, it's a lifeline. By redirecting exports away from Europe and toward Asia, it has managed to maintain a steady flow of revenue. Now let's talk about scale, because this isn't a small operation. Estimates suggest that Russia's shadow fleet could include anywhere from 600 to over 1,000 vessels. That's massive. We're talking about billions of dollars in oil moving across the globe every single week, outside the traditional system. Some reports suggest that this network is responsible for tens of billions of dollars in annual transactions. This isn't a side strategy. This is the backbone of Russia's economic resilience under sanctions. So, why hasn't this been stopped? Why can't the West just shut it down? The answer lies in a combination of legal, economic, and strategic limitations. First, international maritime law is complicated. Ships in international waters have certain protections, and countries can't just seize vessels without clear legal justification. Second, global demand for oil hasn't gone away. As long as there are buyers willing to purchase discounted crude, the system will continue to function. And third, the shadow fleet is incredibly adaptive. When one route gets blocked, another opens. When one ship is sanctioned, another takes its place. It's a constantly evolving network. But now, in 2026, things are starting to escalate. Western countries are stepping up enforcement. Naval forces in Europe have begun intercepting and inspecting suspicious tankers. Some vessels have been seized. Surveillance has increased. There's a clear shift from passive monitoring to active intervention. At the same time, Russia is reportedly considering providing military escorts for its shadow fleet tankers. If that happens, this stops being just an economic conflict and starts becoming a potential military flashpoint. And there's another growing concern: environmental risk. Many of these shadow fleet ships are old and poorly maintained. Without proper insurance or oversight, accidents become far more dangerous. A single oil spill from one of these tankers could have devastating consequences, especially in busy maritime regions. We've already seen incidents of damaged or drifting vessels raising alarms among coastal nations. The longer this system operates, the higher the risk becomes. At a deeper level, this isn't just about oil. It's about the future of global power. The shadow fleet represents a new kind of economic warfare, one where countries don't confront sanctions directly, but instead work around them using decentralized, hard-to-trace systems. It's a model that other nations could study, replicate, and refine. If successful, it could weaken the effectiveness of sanctions as a global tool. Because here's the reality: sanctions only work if they can be enforced. And what Russia has demonstrated is that with enough resources, coordination, and strategic intent, even the most powerful economic restrictions can be bypassed. Not completely, but enough to survive, enough to keep going. And that raises a bigger question. If this shadow system continues to grow, what happens next? Do we see a world where parallel economies become the norm? Where global trade splits into two systems, one regulated and one operating in the shadows? And if that happens, who really controls the global economy? Because right now, somewhere in the middle of the ocean, far from cameras, far from headlines, two ships are probably sitting side by side, transferring oil, rewriting the rules, and proving that in today's world, power doesn't always operate in the light. Sometimes it moves silently, in the shadows.